When, so it's eliminating a lot of guys. When do you think you'll have it narrowed down, and any hints you can give us?
Yeah, I'll probably announce it. Maybe I'll announce it at the press conference this weekend.
Oh, all right. Well, that'll be fun. UFC pre-fight or post-fight press conference? You're going to make us wait till
Post,
after? Post-fight.
post.
Okay. UFC 2900.
Ooh, we are cooked. Guys, UFC 300 is cooked. It is in so much trouble. And I've been telling you guys for a very long time, for the last couple of months, that they really had no plan for the main event of UFC 300. And what I could not understand is how a multi-billion-dollar company builds a card without first having a main event already locked in. I don't understand how that happens, because at the end of the day, the casuals, they don't care that Davidson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt is the first fight on the prelims. Or they don't care about how many champions are on the card. They're going to look, okay, who's the main event of this card? Which fight is headlining UFC 300? They don't care about Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holmes. And I don't understand how Dana White has let this happen, because he let this happen. And now their back is against the wall because they don't really have a big enough main event for UFC 300. And Ariel Helwani came out yesterday and talked about some of the fights that are still at play. And when you look at some of these fights, you start to realize that, yeah, they really never had a plan. And we need to call them out for it. Now, I'm not saying that UFC 300 is a terrible card, but it's not the card that people wanted for UFC 300. And they have every right to. UFC 300 is 7 years in the making. And it wasn't only about getting champions on the card. And, it's also about the matchups on the card. Because I think, yes, there's a lot of champions on UFC 300. But when you look at some of the matchups, they're not that intriguing. And I think that's something that Dana White failed to realize. Or maybe he does realize it, and that's the best they got. Now, right now, according to Ariel Helwani, the top choice for UFC 300's main event is Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev. Really? Khamzat Chimaev fighting at 170 when we all thought he was making a permanent move to 185, and there was this whole scandal with UFC 279 with Chimaev missing weight, and I mean that was all probably a lie. Like, that makes no sense. I mean, Khamzat Chimaev just fought at 185 against Kamaru Usman on short notice and wasn't even able to win in an impressive manner. And if we're being honest, that fight was probably a draw. And I get it. I guess you could kind of sell the fact that Khamzat Chimaev, probably deserves a title shot more at 170 than he does at 185. But really, Edwards versus Chimaev, that's the main event of UFC 300? Really? And some of the other fights that are at play are Dricus du Plessis versus Chimaev, Edwards versus Bilal, and Dricus versus Adesanya. Now, let me tell you why right now their top choice is Edwards versus Chimaev. And it's something that I mentioned in my video discussing why I thought that Dricus du Plessis was making a mistake if he turned around quickly to fight Adesanya at 300. And I believe that that's the fight that the UFC wants, and maybe it still ends up happening if they offer Dricus du Plessis a lot of money. But it's not a smart choice because Dricus du Plessis just fought a couple weeks ago, and he had a 5-round war with Sean Strickland where he did take a lot of damage. And now he has to make a quick turnaround to fight the UFC's poster boy just because they don't have a fight big enough. Just in my opinion, it almost feels like they're setting up Dricus du Plessis to lose to Adesanya if they were to do that. And if you notice, Ariel Helwani didn't mention Alex Pereira in any of those potential fights. Why? Because it made a lot of sense that Alex Pereira is most likely going to fight at UFC 301 in Brazil. It didn't really make a lot of sense for him to fight at UFC 300 when they have the Brazil card right after. Like, it never really made a lot of sense. And then Alex Pereira is most likely going to fight Jamal Hill. We don't really know if Jamal Hill was going to be ready for UFC 300. That's the main event that I wanted for UFC 300, which I thought was realistic. But, I mean, we don't know if Jamal Hill is ready for April. He might need until May, which makes a lot of sense. And it just makes sense for Alex Pereira to be at UFC 301. It always made sense. And now with, Alex Pereira out of the picture, Tom Aspinall out of the picture as well, because, who's he really going to fight? I mean, they could maybe make Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane for the interim belt for UFC 300. But I mean, Cyril Gane is coming off, I guess he's coming off a win over Spivak. And then prior to that, an embarrassing loss over John Jones. Can you really sell that as a 300 main event? Probably not. So Tom Aspinall's out of the picture. Alex Pereira is out of the picture. I don't think it's a smart move for Dricus du Plessis to fight at UFC 300 because, like I said, he took a lot of damage against Sean Strickland, and it would be a quick turnaround. I mean, the fight is 7 weeks away. For what? Just to fight the UFC's poster boy, and you're basically being set up to lose? So maybe Dricus is thinking about it now. Maybe he's like, man, it's probably not a good idea for me to fight at UFC 300. So let's take out Dricus du Plessis. What other choices do you have? Chimaev, Edwards, or Bilal, or Adesanya? Is Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad a big enough fight for UFC 300? No. And the UFC knows this, which is why they're trying to make Chimaev versus Edwards. But Chimaev just came out and said that, he's not going to fight during Ramadan. So what other options are left? It's not looking good, guys. It's not looking good. I mean, I'm not really holding out hope that they're going to pull a big surprise and Connor's going to be in it. And at this point, don't expect any of that. At this point, I'm expecting Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. Yeah, I'm really expecting that now. And I don't think Chimaev can even come into the United States. I really don't think he can. I think that's why they've been having so many issues with scheduling Chimaev a fight, is because he can't get into the United States. So they always hold him out. They always hold him out for those Abu Dhabi cards. And Edwards, he's coming off I mean, I guess we all blame Colby Covington for it, but it wasn't a very impressive or, I guess, entertaining performance against Colby Covington. So for them to make him a big player in the main event of UFC 300 is, that's not going to excite the casuals or anybody really. I mean, yeah, Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad is a fight that should take place next, but it's not a fight that should be a main event. I would have no problem with the fight if it was a co-main event. Maybe they end up doing Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis, co-main event, Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. And, I guess it's okay. Are you guys really that excited about those fights? Like, truly, I'm not. And I mean, the UFC kind of got unlucky because you needed somebody like Islam Makhachev, or maybe like an Islam Makhachev versus Gaethje, or Islam Makhachev versus Edwards. That would be a super fight for UFC 300. And then I don't know why they did not make Wei Lee versus Grasso. I think that was a missed opportunity. And I think this shows why you should always try to have the main event set in stone before building the rest of the card. Because if you have the main event set in stone, you know how strong your main event is. And then you could kind of like start to put together the card instead of putting together the card and then waiting to make the main event last minute. And I'm not saying that right now they barely started thinking about the main event. They've probably been thinking about the main event, but they should have realized they're actually very limited in the fights that they can make, because obviously Leon Edwards just fought Kobe Covington. Bilal Muhammad is next. That's not a very exciting matchup for UFC 300 for it to be the main event. The middleweight title was just fought for. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Sean O'Malley is fighting Chito Vera in March, so you eliminate them. Islam Makhachev could not defend his title because of Ramadan. Who else? Heavyweight right now is a logjam. It's a mess because John Jones is injured and they don't want to fight anybody but each other, Stipe and Jones. And Tom Aspinall, besides Tom Aspinall, there's really no other contender. He just beat Pavlovich, who was the other contender coming up. So you eliminate heavyweight. You can't really put Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill because Jamal Hill is not ready to fight in April. And Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev is not a big enough fight. And then you can't really make Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya because Adesanya's coming off a loss with Sean Strickland. So the UFC got they were very unlucky with this whole UFC 300, and we're cooked. Yeah, we're cooked. And be ready. Prepare yourself. You know, I'm already... UFC 300 is what it is. You know, hopefully the card delivers on the night, but I'm not expecting a crazy main event, guys. And you guys, I'm not expecting a crazy main event, and you guys shouldn't either. At this point, we're probably going to get some combination of either Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, Dricus Adesanya. I think Dricus du Plessis versus Chimaev would be pretty interesting, in my opinion. Edwards versus Chimaev would also be interesting, but can Chimaev really make 170? I just hope he can make 170. Because if he could make 170, then it's okay. It's an okay main event. You know what I'm saying? But I almost feel like you need two of those. So you need like maybe Dricus Chimaev and then Edwards Bilal. Actually, that wouldn't be too bad. Dricus Chimaev, Edwards Bilal, main event, co-main event. Like it wouldn't be the craziest main event because Dricus du Plessis is still not like a mainstream star. But, and then a lot of people don't feel like Dricus du Plessis won that fight against Sean Strickland. But Chimaev has a lot of hype, so I guess you could kind of sell it. But, I mean, think about that press conference. It's going to be like... But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think is going to be the main event for UFC 300? I really wasn't going to make another video talking about UFC 300 because I thought that the fight was going to be announced anytime now. And that was 2 weeks ago. But I just wanted to let you guys know that it's not looking good. It's not looking good. We are absolutely cooked.